Hey heroes, and welcome to another cosmic episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. This week we are beginning our coverage of the Star Brand, an extremely potent energy source which manifests in the form of a mark that resembles a tattoo and endows the wielder with incredible power. Described as a planetary defense system, the Star Brand and the method by which it is bestowed were originally designed by an enigmatic alien race called the Builders. Now, the Builders have been described as the first and oldest known race in the universe, but the truth of that claim is somewhat debatable. Even excluding godlike entities that predate that incarnation of the multiverse, like the Celestials and the Beyonders, similar claims have been made about other species, like the whale-like Akanti and the technologically advanced Watchers. In any event, the Builders were apparently created billions of years ago by an early manifestation of the entity known as Captain Universe, who they revered as a goddess. Of course, the story of Captain Universe is a whole other can of worms that we already covered elsewhere on the channel. The important thing for today is that the Builders eventually abandoned their peaceful path of reverence in favor of a more aggressive search for relevance. As life in the universe expanded and evolved, the Builders struck out into the cosmos and began designing systems that would allow them to mold and control the very structure of space and time. The first such system was one in which they dispatched scouts in groups of 3 to countless planets. A powerful robot called an Aleph that would raise worlds considered unfit for survival, a gardener that would cultivate those with potential, and an Abyssi that would judge the gardener's work. The worlds that survived this process were a tiny fraction of those visited, but eventually this system was retired, with nearly all of the Abyssi dying suddenly, while the gardeners were recalled and forbidden from further harvest. In place of this, the Builders created a far more elaborate system, one which would extend their influence across the entire multiverse and potentially beyond. To accomplish this, they delved into the dream space between universes known as the Superflow, where they spent roughly 1 million years building a network of communication ascension stations, collectively referred to as the Newuniversal superstructure. The purpose of this system was to locate worlds that were on the precipice of universal ascension and to create superhuman heralds to guide them. This was generally accompanied by a phenomenon called a white event, in which the skies of the affected world would briefly turn stark white. In such an event, a specifically selected individual would be endowed with the mark and power of the Star Brand. Not only are those who wield the brand rendered superhumanly strong and virtually immortal, but they are granted a suite of abilities that are seemingly only limited by the wielder's imagination and willpower. Depending on the user, this potentially includes teleportation, telepathy, interdimensional travel, matter manipulation, and concussive energy blasts with a wide range of intensity. But because these abilities are directly tied to the wielder's concentration, it is still possible for one with the power of a Star Brand to be injured or even killed. In some realities, this would cause the brand wielder to fall into a regenerative state with a peculiar alien-like appearance until they fully healed. While the brand was the source of this power, wielders could freely move the mark if desired, placing it anywhere on their own body. They were similarly able to transfer the mark to others, retaining roughly 1/10 of the brand's power, which would permanently fade if fully depleted. As mentioned earlier, the Star Brand is supposed to act as a planetary defense system, but ironically, to serve this purpose, it endows its wielder with enough power to destroy the very world it was meant to protect. Additionally, white events typically signaled the emergence of multiple superhumans, and under normal circumstances one individual would be transformed into a being called Nightmask, whose purpose was to serve as a forerunner for that world's ascension. However, things didn't always unfold as the builders intended. For example, the earliest known white event in the Prime Marvel Universe is said to have happened roughly 66 million years ago. According to one account, the asteroid which struck the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs was not an accident, but rather it had been called by the planet itself and used to crack open the superflow, endowing a Tyrannosaurus with the power of the Star Brand. While this has been referred to as a white event, we never actually see the sky turn stark white, and no other super beings are known to have emerged from this. Furthermore, the builder's Newuniversal superstructure, which generates white events, was once said to have only been active for about 1 million years, having begun construction 1 million years before that. Although that might not necessarily be an issue since, as we'll discuss shortly, Starbrand energy is known to be able to go backwards in time under certain circumstances. 65 million years after that initial white event, 2 young cavemen named Vn and Burke fled from their respective tribes and came upon an idyllic garden. More intelligent than others of their kind, these 2 hominids quickly bonded. However, their peaceful life was threatened by encounters with monstrous deviants who emerged from underground. Given the time period, these must have been some of the first deviants created on Earth by the celestial Zirin the Tester, which is a story we've covered on the channel more than once already, so check the links in the description for more details there. The important thing for today is that during one such conflict, the deviants caused the ground beneath the garden to collapse. Falling into an underground cavern, Burke was killed by the cave-in, while Vn came upon the body of the dinosaur Starbrand, which had been buried there under unrevealed circumstances. As a result, the power of the Starbrand was transferred into Vn, who, in his grief and rage, assumed a hulking, superhuman form and lashed out at the deviants who attacked him, inadvertently destroying the garden in the process. This caveman Starbrand subsequently joined the Asgardian Allfather Odin and other early superhumans to form a prehistoric incarnation of the Avengers. As an interesting continuity note, this group subsequently clashed with the Celestials' first host, which means that Vin's transformation into a hulking Starbrand and the formation of the prehistoric Avengers must have all happened while the Celestials were still on Earth to perform their experiments. In any event, while these prehistoric star brands are the earliest known examples of the power manifesting within Reality 616, there are also examples of it appearing elsewhere in the multiverse throughout history, perhaps most notably on Earth 148611, in what is commonly referred to as the Newuniverse. This reality is an interesting one because some sources refer to it as being located in a different multiverse from Reality 616, but within a larger megaverse. Now, the concept of a megaverse is not one that's terribly well defined, but in this context, all it really means is that the new universe lacks the standard cosmic hierarchy that is present throughout most, if not all, of the known multiverse. It's still theoretically accessible to those with the ability to travel there, but in omniversal terms, it is a reality with low to average variability. What that all means in more practical terms is that Earth 148611 is a world where the odds of its inhabitants gaining superhuman abilities is, or rather was, exceptionally low. There's no sliding timescale, no celestial experiments, and no variants or counterparts of notable figures from the Marvel Universe. The earliest known extra-normal event in this reality happened in the 15th century when a supposed Dutch count was suddenly and unexpectedly endowed with the power of the Star Brand. Fearing the response if people learned of his newfound powers, he laid low over the following years, and soon realized that the power within him was only growing stronger over time, not only making him larger and stronger, but also slowing his aging considerably. Over the following centuries, he worked different jobs and moved from place to place until one day in the mid-1980s, his body was crushed when a mine collapsed on top of him. He soon revived when his body shifted into its regenerative form, causing the Old Man, as he would be called, to believe that the Starbrand had been turning him into an inhuman monster. Weary of his long life and seeking to prevent further mutation, he flew into space and tried transferring the Starbrand onto an asteroid where it would never be used again. However, his attempt to place the brand on an inanimate object resulted in a massive explosion that triggered a white event on July 22, 1986. It was actually this white event that sent the power of the Starbrand back in time 500 years to the Old Man's younger self, creating a temporal loop. In addition to that, the entire world was briefly enveloped in a stark white light as fallout from the Starbrand's explosion fell across the planet. In the wake of this, several hundred individuals from around the globe were endowed with various superhuman abilities, and in this reality such individuals were referred to as paranormals. For example, a young dream researcher named Keith Remsen gained the ability to enter and manipulate the dreams of others, and clad his dream self in the costumed identity of Nightmask. A federal narcotics investigator named John Tensen gained the ability to fire deadly energy blasts with his right hand and generate force fields with his left, which he used to become a vigilante known as Justice. A football player named Jack Magnaconte was endowed with superhuman strength and endurance and retired from the sport to establish Kickers Incorporated, an organization meant to help people with peculiar problems. And a computer software salesman named Nelson Kohler got into a near-fatal car accident immediately after being hit by the white event. However, his astral form separated from his body before he died and became a spectral entity known as the Witness. There are other notable examples, including groups that formed like DP7 and Psi-Force, so maybe we'll talk more about the Newuniverse's paranormals another time, but for now let's try not to get too far off track. Not long after this white event, the Old Man decided to try ridding himself of the brand by transferring it to another human. Seeking an appropriate recipient, he was drawn to a mechanic from Pittsburgh named Kenneth Connell and hypnotized him into taking the Starbrand while speaking as if he were a visitor from another world. The transfer seemingly killed the Old Man, causing his body to revert to its regenerative state, which in turn caused Kenneth to believe that he really was an alien. Kenneth was even subsequently attacked by an armored alien warrior who claimed to want the brand for himself, but this was actually just the Old Man in disguise. Donning a seemingly indestructible costume left behind by the Old Man, Kenneth attempted to use his newfound powers for good, sometimes intervening in international conflicts without revealing himself to the world at large. He did tell some of the people closest to him about his powers, like therapist Myron Feldman, who provided him with occasional advice. He also told his casual girlfriend, Madeline Felix, known at the time as Debbie Fix, who often went by the nickname Duck and had a propensity for quacking. However, he didn't tell his other girlfriend, a single mother of two named Barbara Petrovic. Suffice it to say that relationship eventually ended due to his secrets and two-timing. In the meantime, the Old Man returned, claiming that he needed Ken's help in an interstellar war on the other side of the universe. However, Kenneth had already begun to feel that there were aspects of his story that didn't add up. For example, the Old Man would feign ignorance of Earth culture and customs one moment, while making overt reference to Greek mythology the next. Furthermore, upon closer inspection, he found that the supposedly indestructible costume was simply made out of regular cotton denim. As a side note, this is another good example of how the Starbrand's power was affected by Ken's perceptions and concentration, since this costume was undamaged by a nuclear explosion at close range while he was wearing it, while other clothes were damaged by bullets simply because he believed they could be. Anyway, in his attempts to manipulate Kenneth, the old man threatened both Debbie and Barbara, even hypnotizing the former before attacking her, leaving her hospitalized. However, Kenneth refused to return the Starbrand and seemingly killed the old man in the ensuing conflict before throwing his body into space. After that, Debbie eventually recovered from her injuries and continued her relationship with Kenneth. It was at her suggestion that he made his public debut as a masked hero called Starbrand, wearing a costume that she had designed. However, she soon learned that she was pregnant, and Ken had a negative reaction, refusing to believe that the child was his and accusing her of trying to baby trap him. The two got into a huge fight over it, and Debbie left, using Kenny's car to travel to Ohio, where she confided in her old friends, Jane and Roger Price, telling them everything. Now, I will note that Roger and Jane referred to Debbie Fix as Maddie Felix, which is ostensibly her real name, and so we'll follow suit going forward. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to all, her unborn child was already sending its rapidly developing mind out into the solar system to learn and explore. Back in Pittsburgh, having attained a level of fame as Starbrand, Ken attended a local comic convention in his masked identity, but while there he was attacked by the old man, who had once again revived and returned. Their ensuing clash destroyed the entire convention, killing hundreds of innocent bystanders, including children, with some estimates placing the total death toll at just shy of 5,000. When Ken awakened, the old man was gone, but Ken now remembered parts of the old man's life as if they had happened to him, including how he gained the Starbrand and caused the White event. Kenneth again sought the advice of Myron Feldman, who suggested that he get rid of the power before it permanently mutated him. While the old man had attempted to transfer the brand onto an asteroid, Kenneth could try the same thing, but using a metal barbell. Myron also suggested that he fly to the far side of the moon first to prevent another White event from happening. However, Kenneth feared what would happen if he didn't have enough power left to get back to Earth after the transfer, and stopped about 10 miles above the city. He attempted to transfer the brand onto the cold metal, confident that he could use his powers to keep the resulting blast relatively contained. As it turns out, he could not, and the explosion he inadvertently caused was so massive it tore through the Earth's crust and eradicated nearly 1,600 square miles of land. The resultant crater, situated where Pittsburgh used to be, was named the Pitt, and this tragedy, which occurred on December 22, 1987, became known as the Black Event. This sudden and unparalleled destruction also caused further tensions among the nations of Earth, pushing humanity closer to a third world war. The atomized remains of the city, which became known as Pitt Juice, permeated the area, and while the government put up a quarantine zone around the pit to prevent exposure, there were still instances of bizarre mutations occurring in both humans and wildlife. Even some plant life was affected, making the entire area incredibly dangerous. 2 months after the Black Event, in late February 1988, Maddie Felix attempted to return to Pittsburgh to assess the destruction for herself. However, after getting past the quarantine with Roger and Jane, she started going into an early and extremely painful labor. As it turns out, her baby had inherited a portion of the Starbrand's power and literally tore itself out of her body while rapidly developing. While Roger and Jane buried Maddie's body in a shallow grave, the paranormal newborn absorbed her spirit, gaining her memories and voice. This star child then explored the area around the pit, instinctively killing any who attacked it, including both civilian survivors and military forces. Seeking further understanding of the world, it once again approached the Prices and attempted to peer into Jane's mind. But when Roger tried to defend his wife, the star child struck him down instantly. Confused and distraught, Jane wondered how the Star Child could be capable of murder when it possessed all of Maddie's memories. In response, the child explained that his mother's most prominent memory of his father was of him committing such an act on a vast scale. Meanwhile, in the months since the Black event, Kenneth Connell had grown increasingly unhinged. After saving a woman from a gang of looters, he held her captive for 3 days, forcing her to express her gratitude over and over without respite. That finally came to an end when the Star Child summoned Kenneth to space and confronted him, hoping to become whole by absorbing his memories as well. Kenneth refused, but in the ensuing conflict, the Star Child forced him to surrender the Star brand. Still trying to learn and gain further understanding, the child then briefly transferred the brand to Roger Price, resurrecting him in the process. As he continued to rapidly develop, the Star Child then attempted to atone for his earlier actions by making all life on Earth immortal. Meanwhile, a drunk and delusional Ken Connell was determined to reclaim the Star brand. A motorcycle accident left him scarred and disfigured, but the Star Child's actions prevented him from dying. Having come to believe that the old man was God and regarding himself as a messianic figure, Ken attempted to start his own religious movement. However, Jane then explained to the Star Child that simply preventing death would not eliminate suffering, and in many cases would actually make it worse. In response, the child restored the concept of death, which in turn caused Ken Connell's mangled body to die. Of course, due to the residual Star brand energy in his system, this once again triggered his regenerative state, ultimately restoring both his body and mind. Meanwhile, the Star Child transferred the Star brand to a kindly old man named Jacob Burnley, hoping he would have the wisdom to use it more responsibly. Hoping to undo some of the damage the brand had already done, Jacob attempted to restore Pittsburgh and its inhabitants, but sadly found this to be beyond his abilities, as the best he could do was conjure a floating illusion of the city. He also clashed with the United States President Philip Nolan Voight, who was secretly a paranormal with the ability to mimic the powers of others. His deal is kind of a whole other story, but at the end of their battle, Jacob left Voight depowered for the time being. The situation with the Star brand finally came to a head when the Star Child, having reached adulthood in mere months, summoned Kenneth Connell, Jacob Burnley, and Roger Price into space. At the same time, the old man emerged from the pit in his regenerative form, and so the Star Child sent Jacob, who still wielded the Star brand at the time, to retrieve him. The old man resisted, and their clash caused an explosion that knocked an investigating Air Force plane out of the sky. Rushing to the injured pilot's aid, Jacob used the power of the Star brand to save his life, unknowingly transferring the brand in the process. After that, Jacob grabbed the old man and departed back into space, where he rejoined the other former brand wielders. It was there that the Star Child revealed a truth that he had deduced about himself, his father, and the old man. All three of them were Ken Connell, different incarnations of the same man at different points in their life. Furthermore, the old man's schemes, manipulations, and lies about interstellar conflicts were all planted in his head by the future Star Child as part of an elaborate temporal loop that ensured things unfolded as they must. To close this loop, the Star Child first drained every remaining iota of Star brand energy from both Jacob and Roger, returning the two mortal men to Earth. He then merged himself, Kenneth, and the old man into a single entity. It was also around this time that international tensions finally reached a boiling point, resulting in a global war, during which both the United States and the Soviet Union began firing their nuclear weapons. However, the Star Child intervened, rendering the atomic missiles inoperative and useless. The Star Child then mentally contacted every person on Earth simultaneously, confessing that it was responsible for both the White Event and the Black Event, before declaring that while it had saved the world from nuclear Armageddon, this would be the last time that it would do so. After that, the Star Child disappeared, sending itself back in time to 15th century Holland to close the temporal loop once and for all. Rendering himself amnesiac, he took the form of a Dutch count, and soon after his arrival he was infused with the power of the Star Brand, which was sent back in time by the White Event that he himself would cause in 1986. Meanwhile, back in 1989, Air Force pilot Jim Hanrahan awoke in the hospital, relieved that he had somehow survived such a high fall, with little more than a peculiar mark on his hand to show for it. Now, clearly this is not where the story of the Star Brand ends, but if you want to know what happens next, you'll have to let me know in the comments. In the meantime, that is all I have for you this week, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me give a special shout out to all of my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members who help make the channel possible. By signing up for any ongoing amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in these special thanks here, but Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. That being said, if there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, be sure to let me know in the comments below. But that is indeed all I have for you this week, and so until next time, true believers, Excelsior!